Well, we're back. We are back at what it is that we've been talking about for a long time now. Yes, indeed. Not only has it been pressing on our hearts, but a lot of you who have been supporting us and in contact with us and communicating with us just also have been requesting for us to bring the podcast back. But here we are bringing the podcast back, but not just for ourselves, obviously, primarily to stay in connection with you all, to keep you all encouraged and filled with hope, but more than anything, to be obedient to the Lord, right? As I mentioned, this is something that has been pressing on us for a long time. But I think what has led to the delay, if I could put it that way, has been us making sure that we're being obedient to the Lord, right? Uh, and so again, we're thankful to be back, right? We're thankful to be doing this together and again using our voices in a way that glorifies the Lord. Um, but again, to minister to you all, to minister to ourselves, um, and again, to be obedient to the Lord. So we thank you guys for tuning in. As always, we thank you guys for just being faithful with us, for being patient and graceful with us. Yeah, I'm excited to be back. Yeah, I'm really excited to be back. We have a number of different things that we're wanting to tackle this season. But before we get into that, I'd like to just give a brief overview of the different things that the Lord has been doing in our lives, just to highlight how faithful the Lord is, right? And guiding us and protecting us. We could talk about a number of different things. We could talk about the Super Bowl winning champs, and the Seahawks, and I mean the war that is going, hurt, discouragement, death, and violence. But even just in our own individual lives. So even in our individual lives, right? Like there's some challenges, there's some difficulty, there's some heavy things that we have to endure when it comes to our daily lives, uh, which obviously leads to different reasons or different challenges in terms of having hard conversation. Uh, and I think it's fair to say like one of the though we faced many challenges within our relationship, within our friendship, or within our marriage, family, careers, whatever, um, I think it's fair to say that one of the things that has been most consistent for us through all of it is our ability to have hard conversation, right? Um,
Invite others into hard conversations
yes.
in a way that is loving and safe.
Yes, exactly. And so while that is necessary, right? Like it hasn't been, flowers and rainbows all
Mm.
the time. It hasn't been easy conversations. We haven't always agreed on different things, but I think again, what has kept us consistent in making sure that we put forth the effort to have these hard conversations, and so I think that that's the perfect title, right? The perfect topic overall for our podcast. Just the faith to have the hard conversations overall, right? Not just in terms of ministry, not just in terms of church, but in terms of our careers, school, and parenting, and all the different things, childhood, unity, right? There's so many different things that require us to have hard conversations, but not all of us have developed the faith for those hard conversations, right? And so, again, I think it's a perfect title for us, a perfect overall guidance for us in terms of, how we're going to tackle these different things. Yeah.
So
What would you say before we dive, into what the rest of things will look like for the season? What would you say just in your career of counseling and therapy or teaching? Um, how effective would you say having hard conversations has been in different individuals' lives or groups or classroom settings, sessions, whatever.
Hard conversations are always
Yeah.
challenging, and hard conversations are challenging because of a few reasons. And oftentimes it's lacking the confidence or skill to have those conversations
Yeah.
in a way that is productive or that moves it forward towards collaboration and creating connection versus creating disconnection. And that is a fear for a lot of people in having hard conversations, is that it's going to create a disconnection. And so building their confidence by building their skill set, modeling that is an essential piece, whether that's in counseling or teaching. As a professor in class, I'll bring up controversial topics. I'll bring up hard conversations and set some ground rules in how we discuss, right? Teaching at two universities, one being faith based and one being non faith based. It's recognizing that even within I actually find it more challenging in the faith based
Yeah.
university because there's an underlying assumption that because we are a Christian school, that everyone believes the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simply not true, right? We have different denominations, we have non-denominational, we have Catholics, we have people who don't have a faith at all, but they have heard about how good our program is academic. And so I find myself confronting those assumptions a lot
Yeah.
with a new set of students and inviting these conversations in a way that allows space for people who believe differently or don't believe at all.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard. It's been a hard conversation as,
Yeah.
in and of itself. At the other university, where it's a non-faith-based university, there's more of a general understanding that we are not all that we are all different.
Right.
We're coming from all different religion backgrounds and ethnicities, and so there's a general awareness and consideration that when we're speaking about hard things, we make allowances. We don't think we're the same, and and it's very respectful.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to me to watch sometimes those of us in the Christian faith or who are part of an organized religion are the ones that that have a harder time having those conversations
Mm.
because, right, they have a general assumption that the person sitting across from them, because we go to the same church, because we go to the same Christian school, that we have the same political beliefs, we have the same value systems, we have the same biblical interpretation. And so we tend to be a bit harsher in our language about differences
Absolutely.
because we're assuming we're talking to someone that's the same. And that can be really challenging because there's so much diversity in the church, as evidenced by all the different denominations that argue over biblical interpretations.
Right.
So it is a fascinating
Yeah.
and challenge students, all ages.
Right. Like, I don't know if y'all caught that, but she teaching for two different universities. And so I find that I have to believe like there's quite the interesting, as you mentioned, the interesting dichotomy between the two in terms of faith-based or not, the differences in upbringings and backgrounds and opinions and influences and all the different things. And so I can only imagine the number of or the level of challenges that could present for you, but as well as the student, right? Um, and so like how do you yourself keep yourself grounded or present or avoidant of your own, biases or things along those natures? Like, has there ever been a time where your own feelings or opinions have bled into the conversation or, um, anything along those lines? How do you keep yourself from being too
Bias.
consumed or
Yeah.
too biased?
It's challenging because
Yeah.
and so I have opinions, I have feelings, and I have values that, when triggered, are very strong. They come out very strong. I feel very passionate about them, so it's hard to keep my own value system, my own opinions, my own beliefs neutral when speaking with students and clients. That's part of what we learn as counselors. Our job is not to have an opinion. It's written in our code of ethics that we operate within the client's value system. So even if that conflicts with ours, we still show up and operate within theirs, which frees me up a lot. Where I find myself actually struggling the most with on different things for different reasons, the professor role, because my job is to teach. However, there's a time to teach and there's a time to explore and listen. And so when I'm in class, it's finding that balance of, is this my opportunity to share? And is what I'm sharing and teaching backed by research and science and fact? Or is what I'm teaching I'm wanting to teach pushing my own agenda. And that's kind of a question that I ask myself to know whether it's something that I should be sharing or not. And there will be times where I'll share like this is my own opinion, right? This is my based my own opinion based on my own beliefs and my own value system. And that may or may not align with yours. That's okay.
Yes.
And then we open up the discussion for what are your thoughts on it? What are your beliefs about this topic? And so it's always an invitation into conversation and a willingness on my part to say, this is what I believe. And I want to hear what you believe, not to pass judgment, but just out of curiosity and learning to understand who you are as a person and why you believe and think the way that you do. That opens up connection and safety.
Absolutely.
When we go in with an agenda of trying to change somebody's mind or convince them of our side, that is what drives disconnection.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that invitation piece is critical, right? I think in too many areas there's the proclamation of wanting those conversations or wanting to be heard and so on, but there's not much invitation to actually do that, right? And so, yeah, I think that's super, super critical in terms of these type of spaces. Um, and I think that that's obviously what has led to us being able to, have these moments as well. Um, is just intentionally inviting each other into the difficulty, right? Um, and I think what I've loved about us, not just our relationship or our marriage, but our family as a whole, right? Like all of us tend to be intentional, in that, um, you know, regardless of what the struggle may be. And obviously there are different struggles. But I think all of us are intentional of leaving space or inviting each other into that. And again, having the faith to do that, right? To sit down and not just shoot out a message through text or, hey, pray for me and this was going on, but to real life come together with intentionality to sit down in faith and have conversations about whatever that challenge may be.
Makes that space open for those types of text messages is it's not impersonal, right? It's not a generic text. It's a we know what's going on. We've had hard conversations about the things.
Yes.
We've created the connection, safety, and intimacy to be able to shoot out those texts and say, "Hey, this is what's going on."
Yeah. 100%. 100%. So as we, unpack what it looks like or what it sounds like to uh, you know, have the faith for these hard conversations. I'm interested to hear what has been your individual journey, one of the most impactful conversations that you've been in, or the most challenging, um, or that has required the most faith, right? What does that look like for you?
To mine. And honestly, topic of deconstruction is a very interesting one for me.
That's an interesting topic.
It
Yeah,
is.
that's I'll say in the past year or two. That's been a word that's thrown around quite a
It
bit.
is thrown around.
Yeah.
So it is helpful to clarify what deconstruction is and the importance of reconstruction.
Oh,
Because the challenge with deconstruction is that we deconstruct what we previously believed, or we dismantle, we take apart, we reevaluate, and then we just let those pieces fall.
yeah.
And they're kind of out of sight, out of mind. And we don't rebuild what we think and what we believe with intentionality. And it takes a lot of soul searching and takes a lot of prayer and effort and reading and education to decide. And it's hard to reconstruct. That's such an essential part of the deconstruction process.
Yeah.
Is it's okay to deconstruct. You just have to reconstruct.
Yes.
And so if you're going to deconstruct, go into it with the intention that you are going to reconstruct. The challenge, this is where I find a lot of the challenges, is as I have gone through my deconstruction, reconstruction process, is that in reconstructing, what I believe faith-wise, politically, worldview, all those things have shifted over the years. And as I have reconstructed, they look similar, and yet very different from how I was raised and my family as a whole. And so the really a lot of the challenges has been having those conversations with family members to say, I no longer agree with this, or this is what I believe instead, and this is why. And this is my experience plus research plus reading plus all of these things that have contributed to why I have developed this new changed perspective.
Yeah.
On many things. So I think without going into too much detail, the three of us had a sisters' night, and my older sister and I were able to have a conversation about shift in political views about certain topics. And again, going into it with really checking myself if I'm not going to be defensive, right?
Yeah.
And removing the defensiveness and going in with that heart posture of curiosity.
Yes.
So I just wanted to hear why she still chooses to believe and think the way that she does. Then it opened up the opportunity for me to share where I am now, which ended up being so good
Yeah.
because one of the things that led to was that we have more in common than we have different. And it created an opportunity for connection and understanding. So now instead of her being left with some inaccurate assumptions about what I believe or what I think, and or me having assumptions about why she still thinks and believes the way that she does, we were able to talk through it and say, we're not that different. Right. We have some different reasonings that make us align a little bit differently on the political spectrum, but like very little. Right? And the majority of it is it may just move one of us a little bit farther apart.
Yeah.
But again, the primary underscoring faith and values underneath why we believe and think the way that we do was more the same. And it created a sense of relief for both of us in really gaining a good understanding of each other. But it was hard.
Absolutely.
It's hard not to be defensive. It's hard not to justify.
Yeah.
It's because that's what we want to do naturally as humans, right? We want to justify, we want to defend ourselves because we're passionate. I'm not an externally passionate person, but I am an internally passionate person.
Yeah.
And I can be very passionate about certain topics.
Yeah.
And especially as I'm learning something new,
Yeah.
I can be very passionate about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that passion comes across as extreme to some.
Yeah.
And so
I want to talk about that a little bit because I think as we've gone through this journey together, right? I've had the privilege of watching you go through this process of deconstructing, reconstructing certain things. And there was a specific time kind of recently where your passion was expressed external, right? You came home fully upset, expressing, your disbelief and heartbreak for the events that had happened at that time. And, you were wanting to share it with me. And in the moment of your passion being expressed, I too like took that as a moment of, oh yeah, well let me pour my passion in too, right? But it kind of led to this moment of we disconnected for a bit, right? And it led to this moment of, me feeling unheard or feeling like your passion or feelings were more valuable. And when those differences in passions or opinions or feelings or new emotions, like when all of those things come together, there's a level of space and grace that is needed, right? In order for each person to be heard, in order for the connection to remain.
And on the flip side, because I am not a very passionate person externally very often, for me, my interpretation of what he did was hijacked by passion.
Mhm.
Where he's like, because I want to pour my passion into your, because you don't get passionate about this very often. So you can jump out. And then he gets on kind of on his beliefs and his thoughts. And then I felt like this was about me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so it did create a moment of disconnect. And we were able to, though, to come back together and say, like, this is what I needed from you in this moment.
Yeah.
And that does not mean that there's not space for you, in your opinion, because you are, I know you, right? You're an extremely passionate person. You hold a lot of passion, you express a lot of passion internally and externally.
Everything.
In everything. And so it totally makes sense to me why you would be so excited about my passion and try to jump instantly on it and take off with it. And that's not what I needed from you in that moment. Yeah. And so it became this, the repair of conflict.
Yeah.
of us figuring out, okay, this was what we both communicated to one another, and this was our intention, and how can we do this differently,
Yeah.
right? And me being willing and vulnerable to say, in those moments, this is what I need, and I still want to hear you.
Right. Mm.
I just need the space to get everything out of me. Give me that space, listen, and then jump on my back again.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, it took a lot of faith for us to go to come back from it,
It did.
right? Because of the disconnect, because of the disappointment, the pain, right? The hurt feelings and feeling unheard or whatever it is. But even to add to that, right? Like it took like you know how we are as men. Like we're not quick to come back, or sometimes women aren't quick to come back. Um and so even with the conversation itself, I had to lean on bro, right? Like, remember, I had to call Brian and like, yo, bro, I need your thoughts, I need your insight, I need your wisdom. It took a lot of faith for me to reach out to someone whom I trusted in and say, look, bro, this is what the situation is. I need some positive wisdom, right? I need some a different perspective or insight in terms of this specific situation. Like, let me know what I did, how can my approach be different going forward, all the different things. And so because of, again, having the faith for that hard conversation, it humbled me in a lot of ways to where as though I had no choice but to self-evaluate, be like, okay, wow, I did hijack that. Yeah, I made it all about me when it wasn't even about me. It took that conversation, that hard conversation with Brian to empower me or to humble me, should I say, to come back and to be able to reconnect so that we could have our hard conversation and then growth. Uh, and so again, I think that is one of those moments or one of those challenging conversations for us uh, that has certainly, cultivated a strength uh, and our ability to be able to have these moments. So, yeah, yeah. Um, I recognize like because of like what we were just talking in terms of hard conversations or certain events that may happen in the world, right? Um, One of the things that I've noticed is how many churches or how many leaders seem to shy away from those difficult topics, or they seem hesitant to discuss these challenging conversations. Um, and I get wanting to be, you know, protective of the pulpit or, respectful and all the different things. Like I get that. I get that, every single thing that happens in the world, you know, can't be addressed from the church and all. I get
We
that
never,
as well.
never get to
That's
preach.
right. Exactly.
We're just addressing it.
That's exactly right. We will never get to discuss the word. Um, and so I get all of those different things. And I also have a belief that as leaders, as the church, we are expected to be the blueprint. We are expected to be the influence of the world. And so that would require having these hard conversations, right? Not shying away from them, but actually practicing and exercising the faith to have these hard conversations. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually just thinking about this concept of the church remaining neutral. And many churches want to remain neutral on the things that are happening, whether that is the topic of racism, whether that's the topic of purity culture, whether that's the topic of abuse. There are many different hard conversations and things that happen in the world that the church wants to stay neutral on. They want to focus not on, they don't want to have an opinion one way or the other because they just want to stay neutral. Uh, and for, there could be many factors that play into that. But I think sometimes the church takes it to a point where we're not even just remaining neutral, we're removing ourselves from the world. When we remove ourselves from the world, we lose our potency to affect the world. And so I was thinking as you were talking about, how we are called to be the salt. We are
Yes.
called to be the light. And in order to be that, we gotta be a little salty, right? We gotta go put some seasoning.
Yeah, I was about to say we gotta add that season to it.
We also have to, in order for light to be effective, it has to go into dark places.
Yes.
And if we as the church are unwilling to enter the dark places, to enter the unseasoned areas, how are we meant to make a difference? And how are we able to show exactly what Jesus, right? Jesus being the ultimate model of that. Going into the dark spaces, going into the places that the Pharisees wouldn't go in, the church wouldn't go in,
Yes.
bringing light and love and hope, all the things that he brought. So it's not about removing ourselves from the culture. It's about how do I go be something different and shine a light? And it's kind of like we talked about with why our son is in public school, right?
Yeah.
It's we want to teach him from a young age how to be a light in a dark place
Yeah.
rather than remove him from the darkness and then throw him out in the world later and say, good luck with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We want to walk him through that his whole
Empower him.
life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that when he is able to go when he goes to college or whatever he does after high school and he leaves our home, he knows exactly how to navigate a dark world that he is going to live
Yes.
in, right? But that requires our willingness to engage in hard conversations, right? It requires us to not put our head in the sand about what's going on in the world, what's going on at school. We have to be curious. What are you learning? What are your friends saying? How are you treating others at school?
Yes.
So,
Which those are
you
all things we ask him
we ask
often.
them all the
We
time.
learn them about that all the time.
How to handle bullying and teasing and racism, which he has already experienced. And
Yes.
so it's how we're teaching him from this young age to build up who he is in Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, even just this morning, right? Was it last night or this morning that you asked him? It
That's
was last night. 'Cause
yeah.
he wants to play sports. Every 8-year-old wants
Every
to be a
yeah.
professional sports
Yeah.
player.
Especially a yo boy.
Yep.
Yep.
Uh, but your question of, well, what do you want to do? Can't play sports.
Yeah.
And his automatic response was pastor.
Quit.
And he asked
No
me, I
hesitation.
trust you. Okay, Lord,
Yeah.
to
That's right.
tell everybody about Jesus,
Yes. Yeah.
mm, to show people Jesus. And it's that moment that even with him going to a public school and facing these challenges, we're strengthening and being and having the faith to have the conversations with him
Yeah.
and with one another. We are teaching him who he is in Jesus and to be able to stand as a light, to be the salt, be the light in dark places even.
Yeah. Love that. I obviously agree
Mhm.
100%. Um,
It was a mutual parenting decision, right?
absolutely was. It absolutely was. And again, I think that highlights the purpose and necessity of us being these
Yeah.
moments. And what's interesting is like his desire to share with people who Jesus is. I think for me, that's what has fueled my desire to be able to have these conversations because for two reasons. One, as an Enneagram 4, like authenticity is super, super
Yeah.
important to me. It's a high value to us fours. Um, and so being able to have these type of conversations provides that authenticity,
Yeah.
right? Good or bad, sad or happy. It allows us to provide, a level of authenticity within the conversation. But more than that, I think for me, especially within the conversations that we've had or the conversations I've had with Tay or Cam or like I just mentioned Brian, like and 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 those specific moments or those specific hard conversations, there has always, always, always been some degree or aspect of God's character that was shown, right? no matter what angle, what the situation was, how heavy it was, how joyful, sad, grieving, whatever, there has always consistently been some aspect of God's character to be shown. How important do you think that is in our conversations or our everyday conversations? Do you think it's necessary for everyday conversations? Do you think it's only necessary for the hard conversations? Like, what are your thoughts on us having more discussions on God's character, God's full character at that?
I think it's essential because we are called to live like Jesus. We are called to, that's part of the sanctification process, right? Is we're called to become more like Jesus. And as we know, as part of the Trinity, Jesus is God. And so, how do we know how to act? And how do we know how to go through the sanctification process? If we have an incomplete picture, right? We can't build a house if the blueprint isn't complete,
That is true.
right? And
Yeah.
so we need a complete blueprint of who God is in order for us to follow him, to trust him, to model our lives after him. And I think that is something that we see that is missed a lot in the church, right? That we're not painted a full picture of who God is. We want to narrow in on the love, or we want to narrow in on the wrath, or we want to narrow in on,
The
you know,
Savior.
the savior or whatever that may be. And we forget or downplay all of his other characteristics.
Yeah.
And so creating that complete picture allows us to operate in a way that emulates who Jesus was,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And fully, and it's a hard thing to do, especially as you learn and grow in your own faith and your understanding of who God is. It's why the Bible is so wonderful, right? Because you can read the same passage 10 times over 10 years
Yeah.
and you get something different. It really highlights one of the big topics for us is justice,
Yeah.
right? I we can focus on the book of Acts and the disciples going out and preaching the word, and we're focused on salvation and grace, right? Romans focuses a lot on grace, and we miss also the aspects of God's character and justice in
Yeah.
those books
Yeah.
because we're so focused on the grace
Yeah.
and the salvation. Or we look at Jesus going in and confronting evil, and we forget people he served, the mercy and the love that he showed to the least of these.
It's interesting that you say that because my next question was going to be like, why do you think we tend to emphasize certain aspects of God's character? I think a lot of it is tethered to exactly what you just said. We want that comfort. We want what feels familiar.
Something within ourselves by ignoring these other parts of who God is because we're focused on the characteristics that are important to our lives in this moment.
I think what minimizes the challenge in that is being certain that we are led by the Spirit rather than us trying to do it ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Because we know the more we try to do it ourselves, the more pain we feel, right? Or the more we want to distance ourselves because of the pain and all the different things. We want it to be easy. We want it to be comfortable. We want it to be less challenging. We want to remove whatever the challenge is. But in God's will, while that challenge may still be there, God's will provides patience, right? God's will provides protection. God's will provides a hope. God's will provides a peace. God's will provides a joy, even in the midst of that challenge. Not my will, but your will. Bird, like,
Like like you said, you have to put aside ego. You have to
yes.
put aside defensiveness.
Yep.
You have to put aside your desire to justify. You also have to put away your desire to because so often we avoid hard conversations because we're so busy trying to make sure that you're okay. And we don't want to upset you and we don't want to hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
So we're not going to have hard conversations. We're not going to speak truth because I'm not going to be truthful in this because I'm worried about that my truth will hurt your feelings.
Come on.
Right. And so again, it comes back to being led by the Spirit. It's holding grace and truth together. But I was reflecting on the concept of justice and how it aligns with grace and truth. And is it grace at truth and justice, or is it grace plus truth equals justice? We tend to villainize especially in conservative Christian groups, we tend to villainize the word justice. Justice. And so we can't avoid the topic of justice simply because we don't like how the world has defined it. Because the world doesn't get to define a characteristic of God.
That's it.
We have to talk about it from a biblical standpoint, because if we avoid the topic of God's justice, you have entire populations who are experiencing oppression, experiencing injustice, that have nowhere to go. And so if they don't have any place within the church to go, to be poured into, to have justice talked about, to have a space to process and talk about the injustice, they're going to go seek it from the world's definition. And then it gets even more.
But I think the blessing in it is that we refuse to run back to the world's definition,
Yes.
right? We continue to be intentional and tethering ourselves to the Lord's definition of what this is. And I think that's what has triggered, you know, the need to have these conversations, hard or not.
Others, this is just one example, right? There are lots of other examples of God's character that are either misunderstood, misrepresented, but the church is so afraid of alienating its members or being too controversial or whatever the reason may be to address them, right? Right. There are many churches who focus on God's love and acceptance and forget his justice and forget his truth.
Yeah.
And that is just as wrong, just as
Call it.
inaccurate about who God is,
Yeah.
as leaving out and only focusing on the truth and not the love.
I think it was uh, Tim Keller who said, like, whenever preaching or sharing the message of
Mhm.
who God is, we want to be very careful about how we go about doing it. Specifically because if we just focus on the love per se, or if we just focus on the grace, or if we just focus on wrath, week by week, we tend to hear just the same message or the same viewpoint or
Mhm.
aspect of who God is, but we miss out on so much more. Right. And so and I can't help but to even believe that that would also be the evidence or the product of sharing the message again from self rather than being led by the Spirit,
Yep.
right? Because if the Spirit is leading us to share that message or to testify or to fellowship, it's not going to highlight the one specific aspect of God every single time.
Not
The Spirit is going to consistently show different aspects of who God is.
build the safety and connection and relationship. They are not going to be open to what you have to say.
Absolutely.
It's old school Bible thumping. We can engage in conversation and we can engage in like a relationship with people who are different from us.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
invite people into relationships,
Yeah.
willing to have the hard conversations in truth, in grace, in love,
Yes. Yes.
and that invites relationship and safety to continue to pour into them and to
Yeah.
model who Jesus is.
Yeah, 100%. And that reminds me, like, that doesn't just relate to ministry. I think that we can live by that model in every area of our lives. Right. What it pretty much is saying is no one cares what you know until they know that you care. All that you want. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes from an author named Jamar Tisby is the relationship racism is a problem, or abortion is a problem, or whatever the word immigration is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But your perspective on it drastically changes when you know someone directly impacted,
Come on now.
right?
Come on.
And so it is through relationships with people who are different than you that your worldview shifts. These issues are no longer impersonal and theoretical and moral. They're personal. They're people whose lives are impacted and affected by these issues. And it can change like, oh, like maybe I should consider.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna share a story, and this is part of the conversation I had with my sister uh, around Eliza. Those of you who
Our
don't
lives.
Eliza. Those of you who don't know, right? Your daughter was still last March, and so I had very severe preeclampsia, wound up in a medical center, and she ended up passing at stillbirth. Uh, but in that process, the conversation with the doctors in that moment, as my life was on the line, her life was on the line, was we're going to do everything for your baby, and your life is our priority. You have people here who need you. Your life is our priority. And as we've seen a shift in laws, abortion, anti-abortion, there have that if we lived in a state that had one of those more extreme anti-abortion laws, that would have been a very different conversation. It would have been, well, we're going to try to save you, but we have to save your baby, or we're liable legally
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
her death.
Mm.
And therefore, I very well could have lost my life in that situation in their attempt to save
I feel it very well. In jail?
her. Yeah. And so it alters my perspective of certain abortion laws. Now, to clarify, right? Pro-life, womb to tomb, pro-life.
100%.
And it shifted my perspective about lawmaking. So not the moral issue of abortion. It shifted my viewpoint of the laws that are being created.
Yeah.
Are and so I have become very grateful for that experience and that conversation because I do have a son and I do have a husband who need me, who are here now who need me. And while we still question the purpose of losing Eliza and struggle with the grief of that, we have, because we believe in who God is and the completeness who God is, we have been able to find hope and peace in the process. But again, it requires hard conversations. We had, and honestly, like it's hard conversations with me and God, and that's
Yes.
where it starts. Me and
Yes.
God had
Yes.
some not very nice conversations,
Man, that part.
right?
That part.
Having those and wrestling those out with God and
Yeah.
experiencing his response to my feelings, to my anger, and to my grief allowed me to be able to work through what I believe and what I think and gave me a sense of peace and allowed me to engage in the hard conversations with others.
In order to have those conversations, it requires faith. Because it'd be too easy to say, "Oh man, God, you ain't come through on this. Like, I'm angry,
Mm.
right? Or you disappointed me on this. I'm turning my back on you." No. But to avoid doing that, it takes the faith, it takes that courage, it takes even the hope or desperation to still approach His throne with that grief, with that heartache, with that sadness, with that confusion, with whatever that
Mhm.
heaviness is, right? And so I think just with that in mind, it confirms why we don't have to be afraid of the Lord, right? Like, yes, we are to fear him, but as bro just preached the other day, like it's a different level of fear. It's not a fear like a or or I'm afraid to go to talk to God about this. It's more of a respect fear. And so, in other words, because I respect you, Lord, because I fear my life without you, I need to come to you with this heaviness. I need to come to you with sadness, with this grief, with this depression, anxiety, worry, whatever it is, joy, excitement, whatever, it takes faith to be able to do that. And like we said, we get to the more that we do it, I think we get to learn different aspects of God's character. So it's not just the love, it's not just the justice, it's not just, the savior. We get to learn Jesus the friend. We get to learn Jesus the coach, Jesus the best, the brother or the sister, or all the different things. And for me, getting to experience that more, I think it has strengthened a deeper relationship, right? Almost a like, again, like a man, a yearning even, like, "Oh, I look forward to getting to spend my time with the Lord." Like, you know how I get with Tay sometimes,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, "Oh, yes, babe, I'm excited." I get to chop it up with Cam today, like that excitement of getting
To
to
spend time.
connect and spend time with someone who means so much, um, without either of you wanting or needing something specific from each other,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so again, it there's some intimacy to that. There's that authenticity to that. There's so much health within that space of having hard conversations. So I think again it is necessary. Yeah.
Which really kind of just transitioned into a
Yeah.
lot big for the hard conversation. What's hard?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
really talked about seasons, right? In season one, uh, developing a full picture of who God is, like
Yeah.
all of who God is. So we're going to spend the next however many months unpacking different aspects of God's character. Is. Each month will have a different focus, and within that, we'll have 2 to 4 episodes per month.
We are deeply passionate
Mm.
about. We will be intentional about, coming together and providing this content for you guys. But as mentioned in the beginning, like this ain't just for us. Like we want to connect with y'all too, right? So yeah, whatever it is that the Lord puts on you guys' hearts, shoot it to us. Uh, whether on our YouTube channel, social media, Facebook, whatever it is, you see us throughout the community and church, whatever. Email us.
We are not experts, and I think that's important to say. Like, we are humans this journey with you, and we're on this journey together, and we're just inviting you into our own journey in fully learning about, knowing, embracing all of the different.
Yeah. With that being said, we look forward to connecting with you guys. Just thank you guys for the support, tuning in, or chiming in and sharing your opinion, or even encouraging us, right? A lot of y'all have pushed us, encouraged us, uplifted us, and prayed for us for different seasons. And so thank you guys for that as well. Um, so Father God, we come to you right now, um, just full of grace, full of humility, full of thanksgiving for all that you are doing in our lives. We lift this podcast up to you, Lord. This is not our platform. This is your platform um, that you have trusted us to manage. And we just thank you for trusting us. We thank you for the opportunity to um, speak encouragement, to speak love, to speak peace, to speak your character into the community, uh, to our circles, our families, our individual lives. Holy Spirit, we just thank you for all that you are doing, guidance that you have provided for us, the encouragement, uh, those that you've placed around us to encourage us and to keep us uplifted. We just thank you for all of it, all the support and the faith that it takes to have these hard conversations. We thank you and we praise your holy name for all that you are doing until we meet again. In your name that we pray. Amen.